Okay, so hello. In this video, I'll be going over a few examples regarding flowcharts. I'll try to explain how flowcharts are used by showing you some examples based on the researches that you guys have created in your practical research too. So, just a quick refresher, flowcharts are used in order to visualize a process, whether this is a business process, a software process, or even a task. Flowcharts are very useful in those cases. You may be thinking that flowcharts can only be used for softwares, and that is not the case. If you want, let's say, to create a flowchart of a advertisement, a flowchart of a book publishing or a uh, seminar, things like that. You can create flowcharts for those things. In our case, we'll focus mainly on how to create flowcharts for software, as long as along with how to create flowcharts for other ICT related um, products or tools. So, to start, let us think of a scenario. In this case, I'll use one commonly given output for the many groups. That is an enrollment system. So, many of you have created an enrollment system for your project. So, let us try to make a simple flowchart based on that. So, in this case, our flowchart's objective is to check if a student is currently enrolled, if they are in the database, and if not, they will add their information and then enroll them. If they are already in the database, or if they are an old student, then they will simply enroll them and print the enrollment sheet. So, to start, we always go for the or ellipse. We will draw a small ellipse here, and this will be our starting stage. So let me just add a text over here. Start. Let's drag that in the middle. There we go. So the next step that I would like to add here is a process. So let's draw a small box here for a process. And for this process, we will initialize database. So, uh, oh, initialize. There we go. So, for our next step after we start the process, we'll initialize the database. Take note, you don't have to follow this exactly. You don't have to initialize every variable. This is simply to demonstrate how you can construct your flowchart. There is no single way to do it. Okay, so next step is I would like to include another process. This time, I'll draw a parallelogram. Why? Because I will be requesting input from the user. And if you recall, when we get inputs or outputs, we will make use of a parallelogram. So, in this case, let us put some text here. Enter student LRN. So, what does this mean? We will start off with initializing our database, and then we will ask our user to enter the LRN of our student. Okay, so let us proceed. Next up, I would like to use a diamond. Why? Because I would like to check the entered LRN. So let's make this a bit wider so I can fit some text. There we go. And then, oops, let's draw an arrow. Okay, now, assuming that the user has entered their LRN, what will our decision be? What would we like to check? We would like to check if or is the student found in the database. Okay, all right, I think that should be okay. So, what does this mean? We let the user enter their LRN here, and then, oops, after they have entered their LRN, we will check if that LRN is found in the database. Why? In the example I'm using, we will assume that if the student is found in the database, that means that they are an old student. And if they are not found in the database, we will assume that they are a new student or a transferee. So, in the case of our decision, we can have two outputs. Either they are found or they are not found. So let's draw two arrows. Let's have one here and one here. Okay, so obviously we have two possible outcomes, yes or no. So let's have the no be here, and let's have the yes be here. So what do this mean? Is the student found in the database? No. In other words, false. The student is not found in the database. That is referring to this flow here. Is the student found in the database? Yes. That is referring to this flow here. Okay. So let us focus first on the no portion. So let's add another rectangle. Let's add the process here. Let's make it a bit longer. There we go. And then let us complete our arrow. Okay, so for our process, okay, we have found that our student is not in the database, so what we can do is we can add LRN to database. Or simply put, we can just add the student to the. So we assume that the student is not part of the database, so we will add them. We'll add at least their ID number or LRN. Okay, what's the next step then after that? For this, I will draw a parallelogram because I would like to get additional input. Okay. So why did I draw a parallelogram? Because I will, after I have added them to the database, obviously what I have added is simply their LRN. That is not all the information that we can get. We will obviously need to uh, input or enter student information. So obviously, in this case, what we mean by information is things such as educational background, personal information, things like that. So you are going to collect that data and include it into the database after you have added the initial ID or the initial LRN. So that's the idea here. That is at least how I have constructed my flowchart. Next step is after we have added the student information, the next step is obviously to enroll them. So let's put that, let's see, let's put that here. And let us write, or let's add text rather. So enroll subjects for student. There we go. So the next step obviously is we want to enroll them, or we want to enroll their subjects. So let's draw a line here. Okay, and let's have one last step before we end it. We will, let's put it here. Okay, so in this step, we will, let's make that a bit wider. There we go. So in this last step, before we end the flowchart, we will print the enrollment form. Okay, Sorry, it doesn't really fit in the box, but that's fine. So let's draw a line here. Okay, and then let's finish it up with a ellipsis. Oops. Okay, and let's add some text inside that. This is now our end. So we will end our flowchart here. We will assume that the process is needed or the system is no longer needed, and we can end the process. Now, let us do a brief recap. So this is our example enrollment system. We will start here. We'll initialize the database, which is a process. We will ask for input. Specifically, we'll ask the user to input the student LRN. After they have done that, they will check, is the student found in the database? Yes or no. If it's no, they will add them and then they will enter their student information. So we will ask for additional input. After which we will enroll the student and then print the enrollment form. So quite straightforward. Now you may notice that we left this here. What do we do if the student is already in the already in the database? Obviously, if they are already there, we can assume that they are an old or returning student. So in that case, we do not have to do these two steps here. We don't need to add them or enter their information again. We can simply skip to the enrollment. So what we can do here is we will draw a line going from our decision to the line here. So what this means is that let's start from the beginning. We initialize, enter the information. Are they in the database? Yes. So what we'll do is we'll skip ahead and we will go straight to enrolling them for their subjects and then printing the enrollment form. So as you can see here, the flowchart will show us how our enrollment system will work if it is to get information from our user. I would like you to take note that this is a very simplified version. Obviously, there is a lot of steps that I omitted from this flowchart. For example, here, we did not consider a student who is a transferee. That is a different process compared to a returning student, and that is different from a new student. So there is additional steps here which I did not include for the sake of simplicity. This is just to give you an idea of how you will create your flowchart. So this is our example flowchart for a enrollment system. Okay, that is for our enrollment system. What about for something like an advertisement? How are you supposed to make a flowchart for an advertisement? Let's make a new file. Okay, in this case, the scenario that I have thought up is that assuming you have your advertisement, it's already complete. You have already printed it, or not printed it, but you have already published it and it's ready for deployment. In this case, the goal of your output or your process would be to make sure that it's as effective and it it does the job that it's required to do. In other words, your advertisement is able to successfully advertise whatever it's supposed to show. So if it's, let's say, advertising UC, if it is advertising a product, if it is advertising a service, if it is bringing awareness, the goal of your process in this case would be to showcase or to have your advertisement achieve those things. So let's start. Let's try to demonstrate that here. Let's draw an ellipsis. Start off again with the basics. We will draw a starting stage or shape. Start. Let's draw that or tap that rather. Next, we will have our first process. So the process that we'll have here is quite straightforward. It's something that you will do if you are going to create your or you're going to deploy your advertisement. Obviously you want to identify target audience or the target audience. Take note that again, this does not have to be exactly what you do for your outputs. This is to simply simply to give you an idea of how you can create your flowchart. So let's draw a line there. Okay, so let's say you have already gotten past that first step. You have identified your target audience. What's next? Once you've done that, the next step can be to deploy. So you deploy your advertisement or advertisement. So you are already ready to deploy, or let's use a better word. Let's use publish. Publish your advertisement. So you've already identified a target market, you've narrowed them down who will best benefit, so you are ready now to publish. Okay, great. What's next after publishing? The next step is to collect input. What type of input could I collect in this case? It's an advertisement. How will I collect input? In this case, what I will collect is feedback. In other words, I will collect feedback on the effectiveness or the uh, usefulness of my advertisement. Has it achieved its goal? Am I able to convince the viewer to do this or to bring awareness to that issue or this issue? Am I convincing them to buy this product? So that's the idea here. You are asking your viewer for feedback in order to try and gauge their reaction to your advertisement. You see this a lot in Google Ads. You can give feedback or even report ads which are inappropriate. Similarly, we would like to collect feedback from our users on whether or not our advertisement is effective. So we'll collect the feedback, and then the next step we can do is we can do a process here. Let's make that a bit long. There we go. So in this case, we will have another process wherein we will analyze. In other words, we will get that feedback and we will try to see, okay, based on the answers that we received, is our advertisement doing its job? Is our advertisement achieving the objectives that we set out to achieve? So that is our next step. After that, we can make use of a diamond, and we want to come now to a decision. Let's make that a bit. There we go. Okay, in this case, we will come now to a decision. We want to ask ourselves, is the ad or advertisement effective? So we are asking if the advertisement that we created is able to do its job. If it is, then we can say that, hey, great, we have achieved our objective. But if it's not, then obviously something needs to be done. So what can we do here? Let us take note again, this is a decision, so we can have multiple exit uh, arrows or exit avenues. So in this case, let's have two again. So is the ad effective, yes or no? So in this case, let's have one be for the effective and one for be or one will be for the not effective or no. So let's add some text there. Yes. And another text here. No. Okay. So, similar to our previous example, let's focus on the no first. Now, let's just briefly go back here. We identified the target audience, we published the advertisement, we collected feedback, we analyzed the feedback, and we determined after analysis that our ad is not effective. What can we do next? What is our next logical step? Obviously, we want to make it better. So, in this case, we can improve or modify our advertisement. There we go. So here we have determined that, okay, clearly there are some issues that our advertisement has. So what we can do is we can determine what is wrong and we can modify it as needed. And then after that, the next step is, do we end it here? No. We are going to draw an arrow going back here. Let's make the arrow a bit better, shall we? There we go. There. Now, what does this tell us? After we have determined if the ad is effective, we say no, then we modify and improve it. The next step after improving it is to go back here and publish the advertisement again. Why? Why are we gonna loop back to the beginning? Because we want to collect feedback again and check if our modified advertisement has succeeded in its objectives. So that's the idea here. We will not be able to get out of this loop unless we make sure that our improvements are substantial, that we are able to meet the goal of having our advertisement make people want to buy the product or make people want to join UC or our school, etc. That's the idea here. So, if that is for the no, what about the yes? What happens if the ad is effective? Let's draw a box. So, in this case, the ad is considered now to be effective, so we can then conclude that we will simply continue showing the advertisement. In this case, we have concluded that our advertisement has achieved its objective, so we can simply keep it as is. As they say, do not fix what is not broken. So, in this case, we will continue showing the advertisement and we can then wrap up this flowchart with a end stage or end symbol. There we go. Then we draw a line here. Okay, so as you can see, we have now a flowchart for our advertisement. Again, we identified the audience in this case, published, collect feedback, analyze feedback. We check is the ad effective, we improve if it's needed, and then we publish until we can guarantee that our ad is effective, after which we will conclude that we can just continue showing the advertisement and we end it there. Again, take note, I have glossed over a lot of information. You could add additional steps here on identifying what parts need improvement. If it's the message, is it the concept, is it the animation? So there's many other parts or processes rather that you can include to make your flowchart much more detailed and much more uh, comprehensive. The idea of again of flowcharts is they have to give you an idea of your system without having to know all the technicalities. You can if I were to show this, for example, to a non-technical person, they can understand what your system does without knowing anything about programming, without knowing anything about ICT. They can say, okay, I understand what your system does and how it works. That's the idea of a flowchart. So hopefully you keep that in mind when you create your own flowcharts for your systems. Again, it's not limited to just creating flowcharts for software. You can make them for other things, books, even guidelines, a seminar. You can create them for advertisements, for tasks, etc. So it's quite versatile, this tool or this flowcharts. Okay, so that's all. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.